Hello, Natalie. How are you? And welcome to episode 3 of Stories Untold with Marvae.
Hello, nice to see you again. It's nice to be here. I've been really enjoying having this opportunity, this platform to speak about a topic that is close to my heart.
So today I'm gonna ask you some questions related to your profession, and then we have some good news for our viewers at the end.
Mhm.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Um, so under mental health and crisis situations, what are the most common mental health issues you encounter during crisis interventions?
Great question. So when I was thinking about how to answer this question, of course, my lens is the environment that I work in now, which is with foster youth, ages 15 to 25. So this answer to this question is tailored to that demographic. What I will say in addition to that is that when I'm working with clients in a different capacity where it's more of like long-term therapy, working through day-to-day stressors, situational um, crises that they might find themselves in, the therapy looks different. It feels different. The conversations are different. So when we are differentiating between a crisis and a stressor. A crisis is something that is very serious. That means that mentally, physically, emotionally, your body is unwell, your thoughts are unwell, they're going in a very dark place. So, typically when clients come in, some things that I might see are, you know, just panic attacks, um, people who are just physically not well. They may have induced some substances that may have altered their, physiological system. They come in and a lot of times they want to harm themselves. They're in that space of wanting to commit suicide and not be here anymore. Um, it's rare, but clients do come in and they might be dealing with a psychotic episode. So they might be hallucinating, they might be talking to themselves, they might have disorganized thinking. And so again, this is really within the umbrella of a serious crisis, which means we need to act fast and we need to hold that space for that person so we can de-escalate and hopefully help them get to a ground level where we can make the next decision, right? Which would be to either get them higher level of care if they are willing, or to help them think through the thought process of, okay, what is the next thing once I've reached this climax and now I'm starting to come down from it? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So, would you make a subsequent appointment for these people, or is it just one time that they're seeing you?
Great question. Yeah. So, in the situations in the work environment that I'm in now, the ideal situation is to get them connected to behavioral health services. So, we are actively doing referrals to make sure that at least on the back end, we've connected them with an organization that can further assist them because we obviously are a resource center and we are only able to outsource certain things. Behavioral health is another large component, of any city or county where you can go and get specific mental health services. So ideally, yes, that is definitely a standard for what we offer in our organization. Again, it the success rate of getting the clients connected is of course 95% or higher. But the other part of that is if the client is ready and willing to get connected with the services. So we do our due diligence, of course. And if you're someone, I think there is a question about this later in the discussion, but if you're someone who has a friend, a family member, or even someone that you just met that you think needs some support, there are definitely city and county services that you can reach out to get people connected.
I would think, though, that some people would want to come back to you based on your demeanor and how you speak to them? Have you had some clients that have said, you know what, I really would like to come back to you and stay in one place?
Yes, definitely. And I really appreciate the consistency when I do meet clients who genuinely feel very safe and held in that space with my type of energy and just my style of therapy and just what I offer people. I really love to connect and build relationships. So my hope is always that clients will feel safe, that they will get exactly what they need. And if not, then I'm able to connect them with someone that can. And I love to see clients coming back on a regular basis because it means that they are in that space of being motivated to, and figure out like what is this thing that is really stressing my life, and oh, here I have someone that I can talk to about it and kind of help me, you know come to the answer or the idea of what I can do to help it. So definitely I get regular clients coming back.
Good, good. All right. Let's see. Let's go to number two. How do you differentiate between a mental health emergency and a situational crisis?
Okay, so that's a great question. Good lead in to this question. So, a mental health crisis means that this person is at immediate risk. They need help right now. They're not well, they're at harm to themselves, they're at harm to someone else. They are either going through a severe mental disorder, and so they're not able and capable of making sound decisions. As I said before, a lot of them come in and they're just in this space of, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to end my life. Or they're coming in with very heavy, aggressive energy and they just want to hurt something or someone, unfortunately. So I have seen violent outbursts, and very dangerous behavior. So it's definitely acute symptoms. And there's symptoms where it is a chain reaction that happens very quickly. Like the baseline escalates to a climax very, very fast. So that is in the realm of a mental health emergency. Now, in a situational crisis, I don't usually like to throw around the word crisis too much, but in a situational crisis, um, what I would say to that is it's more of, let's say that I lost my job, or someone died in my family, or I went through a really bad breakup, or I got into a car accident, outside and it caused major damage. Those are situational crises where something happened, my mind is reacting, my body is reacting, and I'm trying to figure out how in the world I am going to solve this, right? That's a situational crisis. And most of the time, it involves a lot of emotional stress. So you are confused, you're anxious, you're fearful, because you're reacting to this serious situation that happened. And oftentimes it can feel very overwhelming and people can feel very hopeless. But the difference is that once that emotional distress comes down off of the curve, off of that climax, then you're better able to tag team, right? And to strategize with someone to figure out, okay, what do you suggest next steps would be? So there's a clear difference between something that's more mental health crises and then situational.
So, intrusive thoughts like suicide, things like that, that's not
Hmm.
situational then. Is that there's a
Not necessarily. Now, intrusive thoughts can come in, for example, let's say if you just lost your job and you are in serious crisis, you've got to pay your rent, you've got to pay your medical, you've got to pay your car note. Like you could just go down the line of like, this is like doomsday. I don't know how I'm going to solve this. I'm going to be homeless. Like those are intrusive thoughts, right? And that can happen in situational crises. But the other side of that is intrusive thoughts of either something is telling you to harm yourself, something is telling you to harm your environment, or something is telling you very negative things in your mind, right? Or you're speaking it and you're hearing yourself say those things. So that can still apply to both situations.
Okay. 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 Can you walk us through how you approve someone experiencing a panic attack or suicidal ideation?
Yes. And I'm going to correct that because I think you said approve and what you meant to say is approach.
Yes, I
Um,
did. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, it's totally okay. That means my ears are working this morning. Okay, that's a great question. So, of course, before I step into a crisis, before I step into a serious situation where someone needs help immediately, I am self talking. I am telling myself what I need to remind myself to stay grounded and to stay calm. Because in situations like that, it's energy that's charged in the environment, and that can also transfer to me and vice versa. So the most important thing for me is to stay calm,
Yeah.
right? Is to embody that calmness and come in with the most gentle approach that I can provide. Even if someone is very aggressive and very violent, it is my job to stay just like this. Now, that's not an easy thing to do, right? As I'm going through a crisis, I am reminding myself, okay, Natalee, you need to stand within a distance. Have calm body language. Your voice is at one pitch. Maybe you need to touch something to ground yourself, right? Maybe you need to hold on to the chair or a desk, or maybe you need to shift weight. But making sure that my eye contact is there, that my voice is calm, that my body language is very open, that it's not aggressive, it's not charged, it's not going to feel like it's coming at you, right? It's just standing firm, grounded in my stance, and letting that person know that I am here, right? Acknowledging what's happening, letting them know that they're safe, acknowledging how they're feeling, right? It's taking charge of that situation and then offering that reassurance that things are going to be okay, that I'm listening, I'm here if you want to share what's going on, or we could just stay in this space, right? But I'm here. So those are the most important things to kind of lay down first. And then I'm thinking about, okay, is this person's breathing escalating or is it de-escalating? And that's really important because our breathing regulates our system. It regulates our blood flow. So, can you imagine if you are feeling like you are suffocating, right? Like you are hyperventilating? You're no longer thinking. Your body is acting fast before you get to that panic state. And that's where you don't want to get because then you start to get shortened breath, right? Your brain starts to disconnect. You don't get enough oxygen to your brain, so you might faint or something else physiological might happen. So, breath is really important. And that is something that I am hopefully talking them through as I am holding posture, being in that space, and also monitoring, right, for safety. It's very important because at any time, if someone's in a crisis, it's unpredictable. That environment is unpredictable. um, but asking them what they need, if I feel like they are able to answer that. And then I stay with them through the process until I see that physically or verbally, I can tell that they are coming down from that de escalation. And then from there, if I've gotten them to a place where I can actually communicate with them successfully, then I'm asking them, who can we call? Who do you feel comfortable talking to right now that can, be an added support in this space, especially if it's a stranger, right? If it's someone that I've never met before, I'm not asking, nor am I expecting them to trust me in that situation, right? It's just to make sure that to hold the safety and know that if anything happens, I'm basically in line of the target. So how am I going to handle that? And then last but not least, of course, connecting them to the crisis hotline. And if they have extended services that they're already connected with, reminding them that they can reach out to their behavioral health providers.
Okay. I do want to comment real quick and share something. Several years ago, I had a very dear friend who has passed, but at one point she called me and she said, "I feel like the walls are closing in on me. Could you talk to
Hmm.
me? And I said, I really need to call 911. But at that point, I realized I need to just talk to her. If that's what she wants, we can talk whatever she has to get out, and then we finally called 911. But I couldn't,
Hmm.
in my mind, imagine how does one feel when the walls are closing in on them. Like you try to
Hmm.
imagine how that would feel. Like what does that look like? So
Yeah.
anyway, she did get some help, which is she's was fine after that. But I couldn't imagine, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's hard. It's hard if you personally know that person and you want to do your best to help whatever that is in the best way you can.
yeah,
And there is a question that I think that you asked about what people can do that are not trained, to help in those situations. But ideally, you did the best thing that you could, which was acknowledge that you're able to talk to her. You clearly knew that something was going on. I know the best way that I can help people visualize how it might feel like is if you are in a very closed space and there is no way out. So think of like an elevator, or think of like a cave where you walk in too far and you can't find your way back. That's literally what it feels like. Like you are not getting out of this. There's there's literally no way out. You are in a enclosed space and you realize that you are losing oxygen and your, higher thinking brain is now going down into your survival brain because you're trying to figure out how to save yourself. That's a panic attack. That's it just keeps escalating and escalating until your body finally says, I can't take it anymore. So then, you get into fainting, right? And other physiological symptoms. So yeah, it's a hard space to be in, and I think that it happens more times than not, and it's okay. You know, it's okay to step into that, but I think the most important part about this job for me is coming to work and remembering myself before. So always putting the oxygen mask on myself
mm,
before anything else. Because if I cannot take care of myself and realize when I need to take a break or I need to call in support, then I'm not doing a good job. Right. So it's also having compassion and empathy for yourself too in crisis situations.
all right. Thank you, Natalie. All right. Under the umbrella of humanizing experience, what's something people often misunderstand about those in mental health crisis?
This is a really good one, and one that I talk about quite a bit in my work environment, especially with trainings. So, mental health is a broad topic, but it can also be narrowed down. And if you haven't done any research about it, if you haven't had any educational courses about it, or had experience with people in your immediate environment that have gone through mental health stressors, then it's really hard to put a framework around why this person can't get out of it. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, the typical statements that I hear are, you're lazy, you're weak, um, you're just looking for attention, or they're dangerous, they're unstable. I mean, those are very negative statements. And unfortunately, oftentimes people don't understand, how hard it is to move through life with trauma, with that added baggage, right? That you haven't healed, right? You haven't taken the time to like think through, why does my past keep following me? And so within this space, I am always telling my clients and my friends and family that it's not a weakness. People deal with it more times than you think. They're just not as comfortable talking about it, right? And a lot of times these stressors can they stem from unresolved trauma, whatever that is. Chronic stress can literally break down the cells in your body. And it's happened to me. Like, I am lived experience. So I have had to purposefully build in things into my routine to keep my chemicals in balance, to make sure that my brain is healthy, my body's healthy, that I'm not adding on to the chronic stressors that can just break down our lives. So, it takes a lot of inner strength to work through life in general. But then when you add the mental health stressors and the trauma, like, if you think about it, it's like a bunch of boulders, like constantly falling on you, right? Like, if you visualize it. So I think gently, just, if you're in conversation with a stranger or a friend or a family member, just reminding them, if they don't quite understand or they haven't had experience with it, not in a negative way, but just, reminding people that we go through it all the time. It's okay. It's not weakness. And reaching out for help is one of the best ways that you can start learning what is out there in your community, what is accessible to you. And there's quite a bit. And I think there's a question down there that you are going to ask later about that. So, um, just having compassion, honestly, compassion for people, being non judgmental. Um, the things that we face, oftentimes, some people choose to face in silence, and that's okay. But over time, if there isn't somebody safe to talk to, it's really hard to do it alone. So I'm always encouraging my clients, if it's not me, choose someone safe that can hear you, hold space for you. And I think as a community, thinking about how we can further help people, even if they don't want the help, right? Like, just reducing the stigma around it is really important. So people understand there's plenty of things out there that you can get involved in to get support.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next question. And it is, can you share a moment that reminded you why this work matters? I'm anxious to hear this.
Okay, I would say there's plural moments. Um, but probably the most significant was when I was working at a short term residential facility. Clients were coming in and they had severe trauma. Their diagnoses were on the higher scale. A lot of them came in with psychosis, and it was a chronic thing, a daily thing. So I remember this one young lady, and there were days where she would have normal conversations with me, simple, what are you going to do today? Who are you going to see? Are you going to go out for a walk? Are you going to go shopping? We would have these very normal conversations, very bubbly young woman. And I would say at the time she was 18. She'd been in and out of foster care. And so, again, in and out of facilities, trying to basically find a good fit for her. And it was one night where she called the emergency services. And I was really surprised by it because earlier in the day, she was completely baseline. I didn't see any indicators that she was in a stress, that she was going to escalate to a crisis. But for some reason, she felt unsafe. And so she called the authorities. And it was about a 2 hour process of helping her come down from her climax. And after we did, I just kind of sat with her and just let her have a good 10 minutes of just silence. But I kept watching her. I kept watching her demeanor. And I just felt overwhelming sadness because it was really hard for her to articulate what was going on in her mind. And at that point, I think I just sat there and I was like, if this is all that I can give this young woman, my genuine hope that it's enough, right? That I am at least showing her and reassuring her that she's safe and that she's loved, right? And that she's not just another client that has come through here, that I know her, that I've had conversations with her, that I enjoy her company, letting her know that she's a person, not just with all of these triggers and stressors and trauma, but she's human, and it was just a beautiful moment. She cried, and I just felt like at that point I knew I was in the right place. I knew that I was doing important work. And even though I didn't have an outline of what she was going to do next, and I didn't have a million referrals that I was going to give her in that moment, it was more of the human connection. That's what made it more beautiful, is that sometimes you don't need a bunch of educational jargon. You just need to be with people. Realize that life is hard. We're not promised that we're going to have this easy, you know, um, if you can visualize beach style, sunset, Mai Tai life, right? There's going to be things that come at us unexpectedly. And having the mental health, issues for her just added another layer to it. So having the compassion and the empathy was really all that was called for in that moment. And that really brought me to that home space of, yeah, I just genuinely love people and I genuinely want people to succeed. And if this work is going to give me opportunity to be with people like that in that space, then sign me up for sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes suffering the silence, people really don't want to talk. They just want you to be there. Just sit with me and
Yeah.
just
And this woman, she was being sex trafficked, she was sexually abused. You know, they're heavy hitters, right? And so in those moments where they're going through crisis and they feel like there's nothing that they can do, it's not about the solution. It's the process. It's the process to move through this fear that they have that my life is just never going to get any better. This is it. This is all I'm good for, right? And that's sad. It's sad to hear people say those things. And so I think that's why that moment was just so defining for me. I just looked at it as, a solidification that I'm learning to put aside my education and my book smarts and learn how to be a compassionate human, right?
yes, yes. Okay. How do you maintain empathy when you're exposed to trauma regularly? Now, I know you're new in this field.
Mm-hmm.
This might be something later on that might become, I don't know. Go ahead. You tell me.
Yeah, no, you actually bring up a good point, and you are right. I am definitely, I would not call myself a seasoned psychotherapist or, crisis intervention specialist just yet, but I have had my share of exposure to serious situations. What I will say about that though is that because I have lived experience, it has forced me to do the things that I need to do to keep my body in balance and my mind healthy, physically active, and engaged with the world, right? Also, being a parent, I have had to push and grind through things that I wouldn't if I wasn't a parent, right? It adds another layer because it's
Yes.
two extra human beings that I have to hold space for. So I have had personal experience in that realm and have had to have empathy for myself in that space. So I think that our experiences, right, whatever it is that you go through, adds a layer, right? It builds resilience in us, period. Anything that we go through builds resilience. And so from that, if you are able to pull a couple of things that really helped you move through that, that's building empathy. That's taking care of yourself. It's realizing that it's empathy doesn't usually come naturally. it's coming from how hard you've had to work through your stressors, right? Even if it's something simple as passing a test, right? Like there's just certain situations that, yes, have asked for higher level of empathy, but empathy runs across the gamut, right? With either mental health crises or situational crises. And I think for me, I remember that my center is always my heart and coming at things with love. And love is always at the center of everything that I do. So with that in mind and that embodiment, naturally, I make sure to take care of myself. I make sure to do the things that I personally enjoy and give me life, even if that's just surrounding myself with nature. And also, if someone is in this role actively right now and really needs to be reminded of that, you know, we as clinicians, we know that compassion fatigue is real. And we know that there is that transference of energy that happens when we're working with high mental health crises. So we actively have to make a schedule for ourselves, lock it into your reminder, block it off the next day. For an hour, I'm going to meditate, walk, sing, paint, journal, whatever that is, because that does build empathy. So that's how I do it. That is how I practice pretty much every day. I set aside time to disconnect from what I'm doing and do something that fills my cup. And when I do that, it generates more empathy for me and the work that I do.
I think you mentioned in one of the episodes before that you salsa dance. So
Yes.
that's a means of decompressing as well for you.
Absolutely, 100%. And if you've never tried it, I encourage you to try. Even if you think you have two left feet or you have never danced in your life, the music and the movement is just magic. And I would say for any form of dance, whatever that is, but I personally love salsa. And, it really has gotten me out of my mind because when I'm dancing, I'm not necessarily using this. I am, but I'm having to move my body and take these steps and then listen to music, right? So it's a combo. And then once I get into like the embodiment of it, I stop thinking and I'm just like, this is dancing. Like whatever my body wants to do, my body's going to do and done, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. It's awesome. But it is a way of
yeah,
decompressing too, like, you know, regrouping, decompressing, regrouping.
exactly.
Okay, new topic, tools and techniques. What mental health first aid strategies do you recommend for non professionals?
Yes, this is a great question. So I just recently went through a mental health first aid training. And you can find this online if you just Google it, mental health first aid training programs. And you can be certified in it. And it basically walks you through what are some mental health stressors, what are some common catch words that you hear when someone has been diagnosed with something. And then what do you do when someone's in a crisis or when they are escalating to a panic attack, or you just feel like they are disconnecting from either their reality or life, or something situational has happened that has just completely dysregulated and crumbled their foundation, right? So, this mental first aid program certification is exactly for that. It gets you to think about, oh, what are these like indicators that maybe I should be looking for? Like, have they disconnected from friends and family? Are they talking negatively? Have they stopped eating? Do they stay in the house all day? Are they being paranoid by something that's not happening? So you basically work through. So it's a curriculum. I don't remember how many hours you need to complete the course, but again, I believe that it's offered um, as an online component as well. I would take it in person if you can. And the catchphrase for mental health first aid is called algae. So I'll read through what it actually means. So the first is A, approach, assess for risk of harm. That's A. L, listen non judgmentally. Pretty simple, right? Standard, we can understand what that means, right? We're not telling them they're crazy. We're just being quiet, holding space, gathering the information. G stands for give reassurance and information. So that's telling the person, you're safe, you're okay, I'm here. How can I help you? Or just sitting in that space with that person. E stands for encourage appropriate professional help. So once that de escalation has happened and you feel like the conversation is safe enough to open up that next step, it's talking to them about who are your natural supports. Do you already have a psychotherapist? Are you interested in getting connected with behavioral health services, right? So guiding them in that direction. And then the next E is encourage self help and support strategies. So it could be something personally that you share that helps you work through stressors, or it could be that you know somebody in the community that offers mental health services. So that catchphrase, algae, is what they teach in mental health first aid. And it's great because it's easy to remember. I don't know, when I think of algae, I think of the ocean. So
Yes.
that's how I remember that. Um, and then the last thing, which would be, is universal. Everyone should know it, but 988 is the suicide and crisis helpline. So if you want to call that number with that person that you're helping, you can sit there and talk through as they're being prompted, and they'll out the, for the call center will ask you specific questions to help you kind of de-escalate the situation.
Okay. Good stuff, Natalie. All right.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. Are there specific grounding techniques or de escalation methods you swear by?
Yes, definitely. So there's two that I commonly use. The first one is called 5 4 3 2 1 sensory grounding technique. So it's five things you can see, four things you can touch, three things you can hear, two things you can smell. And as you go through this, basically it's for someone to be thinking about their environment, right? Thinking about and connecting their brain to what's happening. So it's getting them to come back into their physiological body and come back to awareness and connect, right? So if someone is in a crisis and they're in a violent state of mind, I probably wouldn't use this. It would probably be the next thing, which would be breathing, box breathing. Box breathing is basically where you visualize a box as you say, you're going to count to four, inhale, hold for four, exhale for four, and then hold for four. And you want to visualize a box as you're doing that. Those two things are great because they're both really awesome grounding techniques. And again, it hits the physiological space, right? It hits the thinking system because when people are in crisis, normally they're in their survival brain. So we want to get them into the emotional brain and back into the thinking brain. So those are hands down my go to. And I would say you don't only have to use those in serious crises. Those are practical things that you can do, especially if you're someone that's more prone to being very anxious in certain situations, or fearful or uncomfortable. Like, for example, like feeling socially not welcome, or just feeling like being around a lot of people is very dysregulating. Those are two great, great techniques to use.
That might be something that I could use before I get into an elevator. So just go over that
Yes.
box again because I
Yes.
hate
Yeah. So
elevators.
it's, I know, I honestly, it's weird. Over the years, I really haven't paid attention to how I feel when I get in an elevator because it's so, um, it's just so common. It's just a common thing that we do, right? Because we've done it all our lives. But now when I approach an elevator and I've heard stories of people being stuck in an elevator, I'm like, Which buttons do I push in case there's an emergency? Where's the call box? Like, what do I do if this elevator stops, right? So box breathing is where you visualize the box. You're going to breathe. You're going to inhale for 4. You're going to hold. You're going to exhale for 4. And then you're going to come down, inhale again for 4, and then exhale for 4. And you're basically just in fours. Exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. A lot of people use this method. And like I said, it's because it gets the oxygen moving so that your heart is staying at a steady pace. You're not starting to sweat. You're not starting to shake. Like, breathing is really important. That's why I stress it so much, especially in yoga. I love yoga because that's exactly what it does. It makes you breathe. It makes you ground, posture, and breathe. If anything, if I could get people to do yoga in crisis situations, I would. But it requires a lot more thinking.
Yeah, and you're literally in a box when you visualize this box. So,
Exactly.
um, um,
Exactly.
quick story. So spoiler alert, I do have issues getting into elevators. Have forever, all my life. So I was gotten in the elevator and there was people in there and I thought, okay, I, I, I felt like I was going into a panic attack. But I had to get to
Hmm.
the 10th floor because at that point, in heels, I was not going to climb stairs, right? So I did. I turned around and I looked at the buttons and I was taking a little bit too long and I held the door open and the person behind me said, ma'am, do you know what floor you're going to? And I was really anxious and I said, hold on one second, please, because I have to memorize what button to choose if something goes wrong. I mean, I just blurted it out. And these people looked at me like,
Right.
really? Really? Like, we got to get to where we got to go. So push a
Right.
button and let's go. So,
And let's go.
yeah,
Yeah.
anyway. Um, okay, so we are at how do you assess whether someone needs hospitalization versus community support? Did we go over that?
No, okay. That's
Okay.
no, we haven't, but we
Okay.
sort of kind of have answered it throughout the
Yeah.
questions. But very, very simply. Of course, in the situation, I personally am looking for, is this person in psychosis? Are they not mentally stable? Are they disoriented? Are they at harm to themselves or others or the environment, right? Those are severe crises. We need immediate action, hospitalization, emergency services, crisis line 988. That's a serious situation, right? It calls for serious actions. Um, the other side of that is if someone is declining in functioning in their adult living skills, and you notice that, friends, family, that would be the space to be outsourcing to the community for support, what we would call outpatient support. Um, Anything that's mild to moderate stressors, right? It could be, like I said, something where you are in crisis mode because you've lost your job, or in my situation, I got attacked by a stray dog, and I was down for a whole month, right? In this headspace of, I have no clue what I'm going to do. I'm not working. I don't know how I'm going to take care of my family. Like, ran through the gamut with my brain of, what in the world am I going to do? I am helpless. And so that's when, of course, I was reminded that friends, family, community, support groups, therapy, it's all there. It's all there. And sometimes we just need someone to gently come along and say, hey, Natalee, did you know? Hey, Natalee, can I remind you? Hey, Natalee, do you want me to go with you? Right? So that's the difference, right? In a serious situation, it calls for serious action, because in those situations where it's immediate danger, we want to make sure that that person obviously stays safe and they stay with us, in this reality, right? So if I can't figure out how to de escalate this person and this person is getting violent or aggressive, then of course I'm going to need some support. And oftentimes that is calling the fire department, the ambulance, the police force, right? To make sure that at least we can get a safe space, safety first, and then get them connected to the hospital, right? For psychiatric evaluation. And then next steps from there.
Okay, it must have been tough when you were down with the dog bite, and I'm just wondering, did you feel like, hey, I got to be there for my people. I'm literally down. I'm healing. It was tragic what happened, but
It was.
did you feel like, oh, I'm here in the house. I'm healing, but I can't be out there at work with my people and helping others.
Hmm. That's a good question. To be honest with you, as much as I knew that I wasn't there for the population that I serve, it goes back to how I build empathy. I was in crisis, and the most important person was me in that situation. And so I knew that I had my support from my coworkers to hold down the space and so that I didn't have to worry about that part of it. And that's another aspect to doing this work is leaning on your coworkers as much as you can and making sure that you let them know when you need support, when you need help. Um, and that's important in this work because when you need to deal with your own life crises or situational crises, you have to take time for yourself. You have to focus on what you need. Because if you can't focus on yourself and help yourself, how are you going to help others? It's just a very simple way of thinking about it. Um, and so being immobile for a month was really hard. But in order for me to get back to that level of energy where I can now extend myself, I had to go inward. I had to make myself disconnect from my work, take off that hat, and realize that Natalee really does need all of the support right now to get back to that space of being able to help others.
Sure. And you are almost 100% healed, Natalie.
I'm getting there. It's going to take months for the scar tissue internally to start coming back together. Um, but I think more so, I'm not so much concerned about the physicality of it because the skin is amazing. The amount of healing that my skin has done is beyond what I could have ever expected. I think more it's doing the work of mentally taking care of myself. And just the other day, I was walking on the street, sidewalk, and it was a little cafe, and I was walking past, and I don't usually look left and right when I'm walking straight, like I'm trying to manage, like am I gonna bump into anybody? So I didn't notice this dog sitting with its owner. The dog leaped out and like barely like nipped my hand, and I had the phone in my hand. So it caught the phone more than it caught my hand. And I stepped back and I just took a humongous deep breath. And of course, the owner's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. And I held my breath and I just was like, okay, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there. Right. But I went into panic mode, right? Because I was just like, what just happened? And it was the same situation when I had got attacked from the dog, right? It was unexpected. I didn't see it coming and it just bam, like literally sucker punched me. So yeah, I left and I continued walking and I started breathing and I just started thinking to myself, I'm safe. I'm okay. Nothing happened. Let's go on with the day, and I ended up doing what I enjoyed doing. But it's things like that. It's so unexpected. You just don't know when those types of things are going to happen. And so I'm still working through those layers, and I will be, right? Because there's a level of PTSD attached to this, really serious incident that happened.
Absolutely. I think I would go the other direction, get away from dogs. Like, how do you keep running into dogs? I mean, it's natural,
Right.
but,
It's natural. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Hats off to you, Natalie. I'm glad you're healing. But, it's like,
I am.
how do you stay away from dogs and what the
Right.
anticipation of what they're going to do, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
okay, new topic. Systemic and social impact. How do systemic issues like poverty, racism, or lack of access to care affect mental health crises? So, this is something that I'm
Yeah.
really interested in hearing too.
Yeah, this is a powerhouse question. And I want to be gentle about it because, again, I'm not in the realm of advocacy, but as a psychotherapist, and someone who does work in social work, we're always advocating for our clients, right? In any space, organization, community, systemic issues that we constantly deal with are unfortunately things that are not ever fully solved, right? We're always working through how we can make it better. It's never a cookie cutter, black and white way of thinking about it. We are always having to reinvent ourselves and figure out how to deal with things like survival, daily survival. I don't have food. I don't have housing. I don't have medical. I have nobody to talk to, nobody to go to. I don't have family. I've lost my job. Like simple things like that can create a lot of stress and a lot of chaos. I would say another thing is higher rates of trauma and violence, um, neglect. These are things that unfortunately there's no set solvers for it, right? If there were, then we would be in this beautiful utopia, right? But that's not the case. And so with fewer resources for learning how to get through things, um, and treatment and getting things and access to self-care, they all build and compound on the systemic stressors that we face. Um, I think the other part of that too is just not understanding, um, and also being misunderstood, right? We talked about the stigmas earlier, about how people think about mental health. And oftentimes people experience criminalization when they go to get help, or they're told one thing and then they're sent to another thing. And basically, it's a runaround and they never actually get help, right? So I think it's an uphill battle. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but when we deal with things like people who have no insurance, or they have poor mental health care, those are things that on a micro level, if you are in a position to be able to make it better, then by all means do the best that you can. But at a macro level, I think we are going to be constantly moving through how to solve these big issues that unfortunately I see all the time. Like it's really hard. I live in San Mateo County, I work in Santa Clara County, and the homelessness has just skyrocketed. And it's so unfortunate because it's such a big beast and it's really hard to think about how to solve this problem that is insurmountable. So I can do simple things like prepare food and go out into the community and, offer hot meals. I can go out with my own resources and let people know that, hey, there's a clinic nearby. We have our resource center nearby, and you can come and get food and clothes and more information about services in your community. Because a lot of times people don't know. They don't know that these services are out there and they don't know that they qualify. So, word of mouth, communication, not being afraid to engage people out in the community, um, is a great way to advocate. But I mean, the list could go for miles, honestly. This is one where eventually I probably will spend more time, um, just studying and understanding. But right now, it's more of me, giving back to the smaller community, right? Immediately in my area where I'm at.
I think you're right. But I also think that homelessness is situational, right? Each individual has their own journey and they arrived there, but through your eyes you have to look at it as a whole. Here are all these people. Let me see what I can do for the community, like you said.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
but in my mind, it's situational. They're all bodies that have their own journey and they ended up there for a reason. Whether or not they want to get better is that's a whole nother can of worms. Um,
That's why I say, like, everyone has a different school of thought. And for me, I've never really got into politics. It's just not something that I am interested in studying right now. But you don't need politics to have common sense and to have common sense thinking. And I think that's how I enter my community. When people need help, I'll help in the best way that I can, right? If I know that there is a community center up the street that will give you a hot meal, allow you to sit down, take a shower, um, get some hygiene products, you better believe I'm going to let them know. Like it's important, right? It's doing our due diligence as community members to know what we have access to, especially for situations like that where we might encounter people who lack, right? Or maybe it's family or friends. It doesn't really matter, just people in general, right? Because we're all going through things. And sometimes we need to have access to those things. And when we are in our survival brain, we're not thinking about what we have access to, right? We're not thinking about who we can call. So I think at base level, just knowing how you can incorporate yourself more into your community and volunteer is the best way to give back, right? To the immediate space that you're in.
Absolutely. And you might encounter individuals that say, "Where can I get help mentally or whatever they're going through?"
Yes.
So that's kind of like the idea too, to spread the word. And you
Hmm.
can simply by giving back.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So we're nearing the end here. New topic: self-care and resilience. All right, you
Hmm.
ready?
I'm ready. I like this one.
What do you do to protect your mental health while helping others?
And so I answered it a little bit earlier in a different question that you asked, but again, it's along the same lines of making sure that if I am in a crisis, that I am reminding myself of my own capacity, my own range of what I can offer and what I can do. And if I don't feel comfortable in that situation, making sure that I ask for help. At its base, that is the most important part when I am working through a crisis. Now, if I've helped someone work through a crisis, then I'm thinking about, okay, what are the things that have helped me? I might try some of those strategies and offer them to the clients that I serve. But I have an active conversation about what are those things that they enjoy, because I might want to try those things. I'm always open to new ideas. So I am having a back and forth conversation about what I like to do, what my hobbies are, and then also listening to what they do and trying new things. And also just taking time for quiet space. I really love to meditate. I think it's one of the most simple, no cost, no frills kind of space and thing that you can do to reconnect with yourself. I've heard people say, oh, I can only meditate for 5 minutes, or I can't even sit and listen to myself think. And then I kick back with, well, I wonder why. Have you ever asked yourself why you can't be in silence? Right? It's not to say that you have to do it, but it's just one of those things where I just feel it's like a warm hug for me. Meditation is really, really beautiful. I also practice yoga and I also salsa dance. I move my body. I know that I need to move my body and I need to move the energy out, away, release the tension, Physical fitness is great for that. I mean, I really do have an extensive list, but I think my three heavy hitters are meditation, yoga, and salsa. Now, I will say that if you feel comfortable talking to someone on a consistent basis, then by all means, sharing space with someone, listening to how they do things can be a great, great experience. I don't do a lot of that because I just personally like to take care of myself with myself. But again, when I'm salsa dancing, I'm in the community, right? So I am around people and I am enjoying their energy. Um, so I know that I need to always put the oxygen mask on myself
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
before I do anything.
So, Natalie, I think I know the answer to this question, but I would like you to share it with our viewers. What if you have an immediate family member that has issues? What do if they come to you and they ask you
That is a
questions?
great, great question. Well, first and foremost, I take off my professional hat because it is a conflict of interest if I am offering any type of services or just advice, and it's not me, it's not Natalie engaging with my family member. So I always take off my hat because I am not an expert. I will never say that I am. I am always learning new things every day. Even though I am highly educated, it does not make me an expert. And someone else might have just as good as an idea or even better than what I can come up with. And I love those moments. I lean into those moments. So I think when it comes to family members, I've always been an empathic person and I have always tried to be non judgmental. I've always been a listener. I'm a helper. I genuinely love listening and offering compassion, right? And support. And if I feel like this family member is more in a crisis situation and I feel like they might need me to take more of the lead, then I'll do that, right? But it depends on the relationship that I have. If I don't have a good relationship, then who am I to be stepping in, right? I am my own person. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have all the answers. I'm going to go into that situation with as much love as I can. And I'm going to be the best listener that I can. And I am going to be that coach, right? With the cheerleader little pom poms, right? Because I don't want to be the solver, right? I just want to feel into the process of witnessing this family member come to whatever realization they need to about their life or life stressors or things that are going on. Now, I won't say that I don't make mistakes, that I don't have my own ego swimming around upstairs and, wants to solve the problem because that's who I am. I'm a problem solver. But by nature, I like to solve problems. But I genuinely move in a space now where I don't want the product because I like the process. I like to help people open up the opportunity to solve those problems in the best way that they know how, because they're the expert. I'm not. And that absolutely applies to my family members. But I'll always say it. It depends on your relationship. And I believe that we as humans always have to respect our own boundaries and know who you are. Because if you know who you are, then you know how to lead and you know how to hold space for people, right? And you know that you will make mistakes, but you'll acknowledge those mistakes, right? And you'll want to build this beautiful idea or this, you know, um, beautiful castle together, right? Because it's a duo, right? It's in tandem. It's not me knowing how to solve your problems and then you're always coming to me because you can't solve them. It's helping you realize that you have all the faculties that you need to solve these problems. And I am here cheering you on, being a coach,
Yeah,
a mentor.
being a mentor. That's important. Let's see, where are we now? Have you ever had to
I think we're almost at the
intervene?
end.
Yeah, we've got two more questions and then we will wrap it up. So here we go. Have you ever had to intervene for a colleague or yourself?
That's a good one. I will say no, I have not had to intervene yet. And I think that's simply because in the situations that I have found myself within a work environment, I have felt confident to lead those crisis situations. Now, if I see that someone is taking the lead, then I'll take a step back. Because in situations like that, we want one person guiding the situation and having someone else in the peripheral holding the space for safety, right? In familial situations, I have had to intervene, but again, it's been more of a respectful conversation around how the intervention is going to happen, right? Because, as I said, I respect my boundaries and I respect others' boundaries. But life is life. We're going to find ourselves in these situations and we're going to have to make decisions. And I'm very thankful that I have an awesome team behind me that if for some reason I'm not at work that day, I know that they are able to take care and deal with just as much as if I was there on the clock.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, what advice would you give to someone who feels overwhelmed by the state of the world? That be me at times.
I love this question. When I read it, I just kind of sat with it because I purposefully, in my practice, don't typically watch the news. Now, it's not that I don't want to be connected to what is happening outside of my four walls, but I've also learned that having too much of that information, unfortunately, gives off that energy that we are or can be in panic, crisis, anxiousness, fear, frightfulness, hopelessness, all of these heavy, heavy words and things that we know we don't have control over. And that's the thing that I try to remind my clients and people in general. I don't have control over what happens. All I can do is feel it. And it's okay to feel it. There's nothing wrong with that. But remembering to come back to self, checking in with yourself. How are you feeling about what you've heard or what you saw? How is it affecting your life? And if it is, then yes, you have to close it off for a while. Can happen with social media, right? There's so many things coming at us, and we are not called to solve it. But as humans, we have these internal faculties that prompt us to, oh, judge it, think about it, solve it, give it, you know, a push, right? Or step away from it, right? We naturally are prone to want to dig into it. But is that the right thing to do in that situation? Who knows? Not always, right? If it affects our mental, physical, or emotional health, then I would say take a step back. And whatever that is for you, whatever coping skills you have built in for yourself, do more of that. Because I have listened to news and cried many tears for things that are not even in my awareness, but I feel the sadness, I feel the heaviness, and I feel the hopelessness, right? It doesn't mean that you can't be active in your community. It doesn't mean that you can't offer donations. It doesn't mean that you can't go to these first aid spaces where you can offer help in natural disasters or crises. There are organizations where you can be a support and you can be a help. But remembering to check in with yourself is the most important part. How is it affecting me? Because I believe that it's not our responsibility to save the world. It's not. Because if it was, think about the world that we would be in. We would all be superheroes. Then we wouldn't have any crises, right? We wouldn't have any disaster. We wouldn't have any war. We would have nothing. We would have straight utopia. So I think that's my best recommendation. It's not an easy answer. It's not a black and white answer. It's just knowing yourself. When you know yourself, you know what boundaries you need to hold, right? You know what you can extend and how you can be a support.
Sure. You know what you can give. You know what you have to give.
Hmm.
All right, we have come to the end. And this is the best part. For our viewers, Natalee and I are going to be partnering moving forward. So, Stories Untold with Marvae will retire, and we will have something new coming. I mean, Natalee, do you want to go ahead and interject and
Hmm.
talk about this great idea that we have?
Yes. So I love the collaboration idea, and I'm super thankful for being invited to collaborate and start a new path. So essentially, this channel is going to be for similar topics, but we are widening it to the mental health umbrella and other topics and things that viewers would like to present. So, not just about untold stories, but maybe you are good at health. Maybe you're good at finances. Maybe you're good at fitness. Maybe you're good at art and you want to come on to talk to us about how you use that in your everyday life and how you support your community or how it's helped you heal from trauma. So I like that this channel is going to move to a more open-ended approach to people's lives and what they provide in their own community. So we'll have a new face, we'll have a new name, and then we'll invite you to send in your ideas. And it'll be a similar approach where Marvae and I are going through a series of questions just to be curious and suss out what is this thing that you do? Why do you do it? Why is it important to you? And how has it impacted you and people around you?
Yeah, so part of the goal, one of our goals is to be able to interview and have people share their perspectives and where they're at and that kind of collaboration. So I'm real excited about that. So for our viewers, stay tuned. It's exciting. And Natalee, do we have a time frame that we're going to execute
I would
this?
say I would say in a couple of weeks you should start to see these changes. And we will come up with a way for viewers to connect with us about your topics and things that you would like to bring to the table. And even if you think it's not something that we would want to listen to, please share. Like anything is good. We just want to open up conversations.
And Marvae is going to get a new headset, much like Natalee's, because I just feel so alien with this thing. And it's been a challenge, but we're getting there. We're moving forward. So we have gone
Moving forward.
over our time, but it's been awesome information. And Natalee, thank you, thank you, thank you again for being here and sharing your information with us. It's been a
My pleasure.
pleasure. Okay, so we will talk soon, and viewers, stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. Bye bye.